Hello, everyone, and welcome to another In Conversation with the London Ballet Circle. If this is your first conversation with us, I hope you enjoy it and we'll come back for many more. Tonight's guest has been an English National Ballet treasure since 2012, Associate Director Loipa Araujo. One of the four jewels of the Cuban Ballet, her journey from Havana to London City Island, headquarters of English National Ballet, has been nothing but fascinating. It's impossible to think about Cuban Ballet or the English National Ballet and not have Loipa's name come to mind. It's a real honor to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for taking time for us, Loipa.
It's my pleasure. I really feel honored to be able to just have this beautiful, I hope, conversation with all of you.
Thank you.
You love ballet, I love ballet, so that's something that unites us.
Yes. And also a very warm welcome to writer and critic Sarah Crompton, who will lead tonight's conversation. It's a real joy to have you back again, Sarah. Thank you.
Great pleasure.
If you would like to ask a question, please feel free to type it into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. And if you'd include your first name, that would be nice. Due to Loipa's schedule, we have to finish tonight at 8 o'clock. So please, I hope you understand if we don't get to all the questions, but we'll do our best. And so now I will hand you over to Sarah for this evening's In Conversation with Loipa Araujo.
Thank you, Susan. Loipa, I'm always a believer in beginning at the beginning. So I think I'd just like to start off by asking you how you get to the National Ballet of Cuba, how you start your career there.
Well, I started, first of all, I think I was a very hyperkinetic late girl. So my fathers didn't know how to keep me quiet. And then they thought movement would be something that will help me. And then I started ballet, but as a play thing when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And then they put me, because they thought I liked it and I enjoyed it. And also people were saying that I was very musical and I would change not only my movements, but I would change instinctively my approach to the music. So they put me in, it was a private school called Sociedad Pro Arte Musical, who brought to Cuba many of the big, I remember American Ballet Theater. I remember big, beautiful conductors, very nice conductors, singers. It was a cultural scene and it had ballet inside. They had a school, and then we used to do performances at the end of the year, the scholar year. And then when I grew up, around 14, 15, I felt that I didn't want to play with ballet anymore, that I really liked ballet and I wanted to make ballet part of my life. So that's when I jumped into what was called then the Ballet Alicia Alonso and the school of Fernando and Alicia Alonso Ballet School. And I did there my first professional thing. I was in the corps de ballet of Les Sylphides, and I was around 16 years old. And from there on, I never stopped. From the school, it was in 1959, then the Cuban National Ballet started as a big company. And from there on, I just worked my way up until I was, it would be here lead principal. And then my career just went from there on into concurses and being guesting with other companies, and my teaching started in 1962 when the Cuban school was open.
Right. So what were your first, I mean, Fernando Alonso particularly obviously was really important in your career and in his views on teaching. What are your first impressions of him? What was it like when you started in the company? Because you just start really as it becomes the National Ballet of Cuba.
Well, what I must say that, you know, sometimes you don't realize things. You're too young to understand the qualities of a person. And then it's when years go by and you become also a little bit less young, as I say, you realize of what the important things, not only that he did by example, but of the important things he would say to you, especially when we started teaching. I remember as a dancer that he was so meticulous about being correctness of styles, of doing the exercise as it was told, and trying to, as he used to say, perfection is never achieved, but in the way of looking at reaching perfection or trying to reach perfection, you became better every day. And that's, for me, that was something that really, you have to work every day and to be just better and better and better, even though perfection, you'll never, because we are human beings, and so many things can lead on you on the way you feel, or pains or injuries or everything. But then when we started teaching, I think that was when I realized all the legacy he had given us while teaching us.
Right. And we have a picture of you with him, which we can put on screen, I think. And I also, I think, of you dancing in some of your...
Yes, that's my beautiful Fernando. He was like a brother to all of us. Remember, I got to him when I was 15 years old. So all my adult life was near him until he died.
Right. Right. And then we've got pictures, I think, of you dancing Swan Lake and Giselle. I mean, was there so Swan Lake, I think
that's Swan Lake, third act, yes.
Yeah.
And that's with Roland, that's Giselle, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think there was a particularly Cuban style of dancing for those roles? Was that something that, because Alicia and Fernando were so important in founding that ballet company, and because it was supported, I think we have a sense that there is a real Cuban style.
Well, that Cuban style for me was and it came a reality to me when Fernando always said that while he was in the States with Alicia in his young age, he always wanted to be a teacher. He loved teacher, but Fernando was a very cultured man. He didn't only knew about music and history and art. He knew about muscles, and he knew about chemic, and he knew about physics. He was a real culture man, and he will apply everything there. So he said that when he was there with Alicia, he saw that Alicia, even if she was taught by different, because in that time they got around with the teachers from France, teachers from the old Russian school, and teacher from England, and the last pupil of Cecchetti was teaching them. So he realized that even if Alicia was doing all of that, she kind of moved or had a nature that was, she never lost her Latin in a good sense way. And then he started saying, oh, that looks very nice on Alicia. So he started picking up from those different schools, what he thought would be good for us. And then he always says, you're my guinea pig. So I tried on you. Oh, that line of arabesque is good for you. Oh, that line of arabesque is not good for us. And then I remember in 1967, I think they went to the Soviet Union then to Alicia dance at the Bolshoi and at the Mariinsky. And then until then, I remember our Swan Lake was very English, very content and everything. And then when they came back, Fernando was amazed by Baganova's port de bras and the move of the arms and the move of the bodies and the whole epaulements. And then it was we start using epaulements and start using arms in a completely different way, like the Russians. So I think our school was distinctive of that. And also because I think we are we have a lot of love and passion inside of ourselves. So whenever we had a pas de deux, men and women, they were completely different. There was really a story between the both of them. And then the neatness and yes, I do think there was in a certain moment a very appreciative way of dancing for the Cubans.
Right. And I think you've taught before that the storytelling element was always very important to Fernando, that it wasn't just something that you were learning a technique to learn the technique, that it was about telling a story.
Always, you have to tell a story. Even when we were dancing with the men, we would stay, we would look at each other and the reactions would be, and that's so beautiful because every day you're not the same person. So one day I'll do Don Q with a boy who reacts, and then I will react in some day, and then the next day would be another boy and he reacts in another way. So it was always a live performance. It's not just, okay, I have to do this, and it was just like a program. I put a cassette on, I dance, I finish, I take the cassette off. It was really live performances.
We have a tiny bit of video of you dancing Swan Lake. So I thought we might just look at that, just a tiny, tiny snatch.
Okay, if you want an anecdote, that's something I tell everybody because it was incredible. This is 1969, first Moscow International Ballet Concourse. We came to the concourse with our pianist. And then because of the high standard of the last tour, they decided that we should do it with orchestra. But it was one conductor for everybody. Right. So we had 20 minutes with the conductor, and he wouldn't ask for tempos. He would just ask, do you repeat or do you don't repeat that phrase? And then our version was twice as more slow than that. So all of a sudden I realized, and that was a big lesson for me, that I should be able to dance no matter what the orchestra plays, because I was running in that tour. He really, and Bolshoi is so big. So I remember I said, my goodness, I've done this ballet so fast when our version is so slow, because that one thing that all of our variations and all of our aparides were really in a very Latin tempo, very calm and very, you could enjoy your phrases and everything. Here I was running, really running.
Yeah. How do you feel when you watch it? I mean, it looks pretty good.
Well, I feel that if I knew then what I know that now, I would have danced much better.
I guess every dancer always feels that when they're looking at a film. But also you yourself, you danced with the National Ballet of Cuba and did all this, but then you did nearly go to Russia, didn't you, to dance? You were going to go and join the Bolshoi.
Oh, yes, that is because I was married to Asari Plisetsky, Maya Plisetsky's brother. He came to Cuba because we didn't have enough boys. So he came to Cuba for a year contract and he stayed 10. So we married there, and then it was his contract finished and I had to go back to Russia. So I had been there, but vacations, and it wasn't like, okay, that's for life, the rest of your life. So for me, it was a very, I must say, decisive moment in my life, because I realized what I'm going to do in the Bolshoi. Bolshoi had 200 dancers. I was the only outside of Russia, dancing in there. Also my teaching career, I love teaching, and I said there are many Russian teachers, so what am I going to do here? I'm just going to die as an artist, and also because of the weather. And I joke and I say that I divorced because of the 6 months I spent on the 25 minus with the wind and the snow and the depression I had. And I told Azari, you know, I cannot live here. One thing is to, you know, when you arrive and you know you're leaving, but when you think this is the rest of my life, I said, no way. Luckily, Roland came and just picked me up and put me in Marseille. So those 5 years I stayed in Marseille, that's what made my marriage lasted 5 more years.
So I've gone slightly out of order, but so we do you go back to, you go straight to Marseille from Russia?
Yeah. I went back to Havana, and then I think Roland saw me in September. In October, I was in Marseille.
Right. So you worked with Roland Petit in Marseille and created parts for him, did you?
Yes. And it was the second year of Roland's company. So I had the chance, which is one of the things I am more proud of, to have been part of the process of a company to getting bigger and better and well known. It was his second year, and this is the funny part of everything. It's just that I came here and remember that we had Rudy Bryans and Gagnon, which were with the principals dancing. And Rudy was such a handsome man that and very, very, very womanizer. So all the girls who came to dance, after 3 days, they were engaged with Rudy. And Roland was very jealous of that. So this comes the Cuban girl that only wants to dance and to work. And I remember Roland saying to the boys, you better work or she will take you to to shop the sugar cane, you know, into the hardware. And then he created for me La Lesienne. He did it in 1974, and that's a ballet. It's really in my heart. And then there was a moment where I was the only ballerina, and I was dancing all his ballet. I was doing Carmen or the Bandit. I was doing La Lesienne. I did Le Loup. I did almost all his creations. He created something beautiful for Danard in Paris Opera. He couldn't dance, so it was La Nuit Transfigurée with beautiful decors, with Hackney decor. It's called, I can't remember the ballet. It was completely modern. So, and Roland was such a culture man, you know. I think he was a little bit like Diaghilev. He was always in relation with the big writers, the big composers, the good painters. So it was a very culture atmosphere we had in Marseille.
Right.
Okay,
yeah, and you did Les Jeunes Hommes Les Morts, didn't you? Which you
Jeunes Hommes Les Morts, and I did one of the experience. I think there are some things that you carry yourself in your heart is dancing with Roland, Notre Dame de Paris. And I remember that last pas de deux you do with the humper. I just looking at Roland, I would start crying. He was such an actor. He was such an artist. I treasure so many moments, as I treasure my working with Bejart. That was another philosopher that expressed himself through dance, and those are personalities that really give you so many things that I'm just grateful to God and to life, and that I was able to be part of their journey.
Right. And with Petit, we've talked before that it's a strange thing that he was so fashionable in the time you were working with him, and so sort of dominant and important, and has kind of gone out of fashion. I mean, why do you think that is?
Oh, I don't know. It's maybe because I think what he did, for instance, Carmen, he did it in 1946. So, and you see that ballet and you see those decors, and he was so advanced to his time. that's something that could be done nowadays, and it could still have it still has value. I think L'Arlésienne is a little jewel, you know, and I think now, for instance, the Paris Opera has taken its works back, some of them, like Proust, the Las Intermittences du Cœur, which is a beautiful ballet. So I think Paris Opera is trying to take the best things of Roland, as I think La Scala is also trying to bring some of his things now. I saw a program Manuel is doing, and I think there's a pas de deux from Leloup, which is a beautiful pas de deux. And forgotten, lost, I wouldn't say in translation, but I said lost in not trying to bring or to keep the valuable things of those choreographers. I don't say all of them, but all of his ballets, either Maurice or Roland's are good, but there are some of them that are real jewels, and it's part of the history of ballet. So we should see them once in a while in the program, just to be aware of where we come from, because they were, Roland and Maurice, for me, they were very much ahead of their time, and they had a lot of influences. It's also Martha Graham. I don't think they do enough. I think there should be moments in all the companies to have the best pieces of those choreographers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd certainly like to see more. And Bejart, when do you work for Bejart? Is that immediately after Marseille?
Bejart, it was very funny. I was teaching them. I was teaching with Roland, with Maurice, and then he came after my class and he said, I'm doing a new ballet. I have a part for you. And I went, oops. And he was doing 1789, so that means what, 1789. It was the commemoration of the 200 years of the French Revolution.
Right.
And it was a whole program at the Palais Grand Palais in Paris. And I was supposed to be the revolutionary. He said, you're the only one who can. So he put me the point like Che Guevara. I was dressed in army uniform with the whole thing of the bullets here. That was for the second movement. And then in the last movement, I would bring the whole Americans or Indians and everything. I was dressed in red with red shoes. And I had to fight the American would be a cowboy in a big horse. So it was, but the making of that big production was something so interesting for me, because then I understood how he would, for instance, of talking about the death of the king and the queen of Louis, they would put him as like funambulum, you know, the light were hanging on the string, or some things that were incredible. He started and he shows pieces of the first, of the seventh, of the eighth, and of the ninth symphony of Beethoven. And I remember the first symphony, children were coming out of the, how do you say, where you put all the waste things. So it's like, oh my goodness. And this, he did it in 89.
Yeah.
79. So it was like, oh, so really like what a vision.
Right. Let me take you back to Cuba, because I have skipped a bit, so somehow. And I love the idea that Bejart thought you were the only person who could play a revolutionary because of Che Guevara. But if we go backwards a bit, one of the things that's really interesting in Cuba was that you started teaching so young. So you are known as one of the four jewels of Cuban ballet, and you're sort of, you know, a prima ballerina and a star, but you're also teaching. So how did that come about? And did the other jewels, did they teach as well?
We all had to teach, because they opened the school in 1962, the Cuban National Ballet School. And Fernando called us, we were his guinea pigs, or his little, my muchachitas, that means you're my little girls. We were a group of 11, and then we became a group of 6. But they said, and I cannot teach everything, so you have to teach. And we went, what? Teaching us? We still don't know how to dance. How are we going to teach? And he said, oh, I'm sure you will know what to teach because I know I have taught you well. And it was true, because when we start managing and trying to explain, we would know the muscles that you have to use to do a turnout. We would know what the position is. We knew almost everything we had to do. And then there I discovered that was my second passion that I loved, maybe because my father was a teacher, maybe because my mother was a teacher, but I adored that sensation of being able to see how people develop and become better and they learn. And from there on, every time there was a teacher missing and they would say, who wants to teach? My hand was the first one who was up there. I want to teach, I want to teach. And then when I went to Russia and I was able to work with Asaf Meseret and with Golovkina, and then and then Violette Verdi and then Stanley Williams. And I was also something that Fernando gave me, which was the openness of not saying, no, this is my school, I won't change this. It's just to be able to try everything and be aware that technique goes ahead, It's not something that is static, it's part of the human being. So if the human being develops into more possibilities, technique also develops into more possibilities. But he was always very keen on telling us technique develops, but you have to keep the beauty part of classical ballet, which is style, because it's not the same thing to dance Giselle than to dance Coppelia. They're two completely different, ballet or Don Q or Swan Lake, or else it's just you're just showing steps. You're not showing style. You're not showing like we were talking about history. Kitri is not Odette, and Swanilda is for sure not Giselle. So that's the beauty of the classical ballet. Technique goes ahead, but that stays.
Right, that's really interesting distinction. Did you, as the Jewels, did you all have a specific thing that you were famous for? And what were you famous for, if that's the case?
I think maybe because I was not able, but willing to try different things. I was the first one who went to the modern dance company in Havana and said, I want for you to do a pas de deux for me, no ballet shoes, no toe shoes. And Alisa said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm not crazy. I just want to find out what is this part of movement. So I was always very aware that there were, I don't know, so many possibilities of moving. And then that gave me the possibility. And as I found out that when you do many other things, you find possibilities in yourself that you didn't even know you had. A way of expressing without a movement or with a certain movement that classical ballet, because it has the structure, wouldn't allow you to do.
Right. And so when after Bejart, you go back to Cuba as a teacher, do you?
No, I still danced.
Right.
I stopped dancing. Well, that's part of also my story, because I remember everybody says, how do you stop dancing? Was it a problem for you? I said, no. In a sort of way, it wasn't a problem for me because I had teaching. It's not that I start teaching because I stopped dancing. I had been teaching for a long time. But also I didn't know. I've always not resented, but I said, oh, saying goodbye to ballet, you never say goodbye to ballet, because as long as you're in a studio, you're with ballet, even if you're not dancing it. And I remember I had a lot of problems with preparing for Swan Lake. Not because of physical problems. I still had the power and the technique to do it. It was mentally. I didn't know. I couldn't find anything more to say, Odette. I couldn't find anything more to say, deals. So it was hard for me to rehearse. And then, well, I kept working. And I remember I did a beautiful performance, one of my best. And I said, okay, this is the last one. And then I had two more to do. And Alisa said, but why are you not wanting to dance if you dance so well? And I said, precisely because I dance so well. That's the one I want to keep in my memory. And that's what I did from there on. I had 3 Giselles. First one was okay. Second one was a good performance. No more Giselles. No more Coppelias. After the good one, I stopped. And then I carry on doing Madame Taglioni, Pas de Quatre, Blood Wedding, the woman, little things until I said, okay, that's enough. You know, there's a whole life. And I'm so happy when I work with somebody and I see them do a beautiful performance. That for me is such a pleasure, such a satisfaction that I have given in all of what I can give to that person. I have been able to put it on and let them develop their own and have them see them in their own way doing beautiful things.
Right. And so what age were you when you stopped?
It was about 48, 49.
Right.
Yeah, but I still dance. I was 60 years old. And Luigi Bonino came to Cuba to a festival, and there was something that Roland had done for Sisi Jean-Mer, which is called Chic to Chic, high heels and everything. And then we had danced, Luigi and myself, in it. So we know each other very well from Marseille, and said, why don't we dance together? I said, Luigi, I'm 60 years old. He said, no, but you still do exercises and 7, and this is no toe shoes, it's your. And I remember my second husband, he said, you cannot, because we had to go over a table. You cannot, it was enough for him to say, you cannot go on the table. I said, I will. So he came to watch a performance, all the rehearsals, and said, yes, you can. So I danced. My last thing on stage, I did, I was 60 years old.
Right.
Got on point with
Right.
high heels.
Brilliant. And what brings you to when did you leave Cuba? What brings you to England?
No, I had been. It's all like started. Like I had danced in Cuba in one festival with Michel Bruel, who was named director in the Avignon Theater, and he had taken my classes and he had seen me taught and rehearsed. So he invited me to Avignon to do Chopiniana, to do the prelude, which was one of the last things I was doing, and to teach. And then while I was in Avignon, Maurice was around. He came to the theater, saw my classes, and invited me to Lausanne. So from there on, and then I had from Marseille, Elisabetta Terabus, we had worked 2 years together. She was named in Rome in the school. So she invited me to Rome, the school. Then she was named director of the theater. So she invited me to the theater. In the theater, Paolo Bartoluzzi, who was in Bordeaux, saw me. So he invited me to Bordeaux. And for there, it carried on from there. Then Elisabetta to Milan, then Elisabetta to Florence, and then Radmansky to the Bolshoi. And that's another really interesting story. I arrived at the Bolshoi and I didn't tell anybody I spoke Russian.
Right.
So I got into the studio and I heard everybody, oh, where is she from? What is she does? What does she do? Like that. And I didn't say a word. And then when the class was started, I said, Davai начинаемся. And all of them were like, what? She speaks Russian. So I was the first guest teacher who was invited who spoke the language. Right. So that was the Bolshoi. And from there on, I thought, I think everywhere now.
Right, right.
And with Tamara, and then Carlos asked, I think it was Anthony, and then it was, they invited me to the Royal, and then I came to the Royal for first time 15 days, then 1 month, then 3 months, and there was a moment while I was rehearsing with all the principals. I'm talking about when it was Tamara and was Alina, and it was all the dancers, even Darcy, like got the last year of Darcy. And then when we were talking with Tamara about directing a company, it was already in her vision of life. And then when she was named here, she said, are you going? Are you coming with me? I said, of course, with you until the end of the world. Because, and I always say that she gave me, because I was around 70 there. And I was thinking already, it's time to stop, go back and just do little. and then she gave me like a second breath in life, you know, it's been 12 beautiful and wonderful years with ENB.
Yeah. And what, you're regarded as one of the great teachers in the world, and you know, partly because of that kind of great run of guesting, but now because people have seen your work with English National Ballet. I mean, what qualities do you think that you bring to it that have turned you into so good a teacher?
I don't know. I think that would be for them to say, you know.
Right.
I think it's just, I try to be honest. I try to work. I remember Fernando saying to me, you know, when you're going to teach, the most important thing is to know each of the dancers you're going to teach, because one of them may need a soft word, the other one would be enough. You just look at him. The other one would need a touch in his arm. The other one would need a little bit more of patience, because it takes a little bit more of time to understand a thing. So for him, and I am completely 100% with Fernando, it's more important for me to know the people I'm teaching. Right. And then, and always not to lose my sensation of a dancer, you know, because I can understand. Sometimes I arrive, I have a plan, organize my class, and then I see their faces, they are tired because of performance or whatever, and I change my class, because it's not about my class. I am there to serve them. You know, my class has to help them, either if they're tired, to be able to warm up and dance, to keep their technique on the highest level possible, not only the technique, but also the artistic side. That's my job. So I'm there. It's not oh, this is my class, you should do my class. My class depends, it's thought and directed for them, for what they need, what I think they should be doing better, and artistically and technically.
So would you vary the class as well in terms of, I know you don't do the same class, you do always different classes, but do you vary it according to the repertory? I mean, if they're doing, you know, Akram Khan's Giselle, will it be a different class than if they're doing
yeah, well, it all depends. If after Akram they are going to go into a classical, I have to keep the classical thing, you know, because or else it would be very hard for them from Akram to jump into a very nice classical thing, like they had to do now from Kriescher to Raimonda. So even if it's not intensive, because it's another kind of work, the work in Akram is very low, it's very near to the floor. So my job is to go the other way around. If they go in the rehearsals down, in my classes, they have to go up. Not tire them, but just to keep them in their muscles able to go into a classical without a big problem, you know, and not hurting themselves.
Right. And have you, I mean, looking back, what do you notice about how technique has changed, and how you know, what the choreography is asking of dancers has changed? Well,
you see, for instance, there's a recording there that it's me doing 7 pirouettes, and that's 1964. That was like, you know, a Guinness book record, you know, doing 7 pirouettes. Now you see girls that on point do 10 pirouettes, and they just go for it. You know, boys jump and do this kind of steps that I don't think they have any name anymore. I call them the helicopter or something strange, because they're able to jump more, because the human body has changed through the years, and also because of the physics. You know, you see them in the one who skates, the ice skating, the things they do. It's incredible, because the human body, it's ready to do many other things. So I think the choreographers also have been dancers that have also developed. So they are asking for things that the human body, the dancers can do. It's like a circle that goes and goes. It's a big wave, you know, dancers can do, the choreographer asks for more, they can do it, and it will never stop. But my only worry is that in that aim of of doing more and more technical things, we lose what we were talking about of the styles, and you cannot dance all the ballets the same way. And there are some steps that are it's very difficult to accept in certain ballets. So it's just to put the technique where it's really needed and when it's really shown, and just try to keep the style and the storytelling of the classical ballets.
So would you be doing that, I mean, in a class, or would that be when you're actually coaching?
That would be the coaching. Class is just to develop technique. Just if you work in class, that when you go to the studio to rehearse, you don't have to think about not being able to do two pirouettes. Technique it's gone. Technique is there. So you can develop all the artistry you need to do the role, you know?
Yeah, right. And so it will be in coaching that you would do
It's
that.
in the coaching where you would say, okay, this is fine, let's go here, be careful the arms, you know. The step is perfect, but let's keep the form of the arms, you know, just to make it not just look like a gymnast just doing steps, but still the quality of ballet in it.
Right. When you look back over your career, who are the dancers that you look back on with most pleasure, either having worked with or having taught or having watched?
Well, of course, Alicia was a precedent for me, and at the beginning, I think we tried to, because she was like a standard for us. She was in front of us. It was so easy for us to learn because Fernando said, "Well, you have to do this and this and this," and then we look at her, and she was doing this and this and this. So we had the work with the practice in front of our eyes, but then. From there on, there were many. I remember Milano, by the way she was an artist. It's my time of Plisetskaya with her fiercely, you know, her freedom of being on stage and being herself, even if she was doing different character. But Maya had a very strong personality, and you know, in France, Chauviré, it was quality. Incredible. So I think all of them kind of gave me points of reference of quality, but also Fernando was always very keen on, even though we were four of us, they would never try to make us dance the four of us alike. They were always very keen that the personality of each of us will flourish. And we were completely, even we were doing the same ballets, almost the same steps, we were completely different. Right. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things when you have ballerinas that are completely different in the way, even the story is the same, the style is there, but their personality, their freedom of expression makes them completely different.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I always feel that that's why I go to watch ballet. I think I've said in a ballet circle thing before that, you know, my children always tease me about, oh, where you going? Oh, Swan Lake, you know, that you've seen it so many countless times, and yet, you know, the personality, it's always so different, emerging. And you must have taught so many. I mean, do you feel that's presumably something you always apply as a teacher, of trying to allow things?
Yeah, I never say I did it this way, do it this way. You know, I would let them find their way, and I think my role is to say that suits you, that doesn't suit you. You know, it's like I let them free, because first of all, there's such an age difference, you know, what they feel like, what they see now, but it's completely different of my generation. So it cannot be the same. You cannot make people dance now like people who dance. I don't say 20 years ago, I said 5 years ago, 10 years ago. They're completely different, and you cannot make the dancers nowadays dance like that person dance or the other person dance. They have their own way of expressing themselves. I think our job as coaches is just to develop their personalities and to make them brighter and to make them better, but not to try to change them. unless they're doing something that is really not, has nothing to do with the ballet they're dancing.
Right, right. I've got a question from Fiona, which I was going to ask as well. If you look at the choreographers working today, whose work do you think is going to survive going forward? And you, I mean, at English National Ballet have worked with, you know, a lot of them with Christopher Wheeldon, with Versailles.
I think it's not for us to say. I think it's time will tell. Time, it's the best of critics, you know. It's the survival. If it goes through times and through generations, and different generations are able to enjoy and to have feelings of, you know, communicate on what you see, and then that ballet will produce. What would you say of Swan Lake? You say it's every time you go to Swan Lake, you feel something. That's why it's come to our ears. Giselle, the same thing. There are older ballets that were done that had nothing to do, nothing to say. It was just pure dancing and no stories at all, and they are forgotten. So that's what I say, that those ballets that were done in other times, that they should be remembered and brought, and let them see if they go through time.
Right.
But now I think nowadays it's so difficult, you know. It's like we cannot do some ballets because I always feel, why cannot we do Corsair anymore? It's just like, then we would have to take some paintings out of the museums because we could not see Venus.
Yeah.
We cannot see Botticelli anymore. All the Venus of Botticelli, we cannot see nudes. Why not? That is the story, you know, that happened. It's not that we're saying this should be that way. That is part of the history, and it's a nice ballet. So why should we just cannot do it and change some stuff? It's very complicated now. So I don't know, some of these ballets that for me it's just time. Time will cure and will say the last word.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been interesting working with Tamara on Raimondo, which of course was a way of keeping the choreography of Raimondo.
But making out, but that story was really nonsense. You had, when we saw it in we were at the Bolshoi doing Akron Can Giselle, and they were playing Raimonda, and it was like a 4-hour ballet with just dances, and you couldn't understand anything of what was happening. And some things that were very, 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 very old, very difficult to see in the 21st century.
Yeah. I remember when I had a ballet book when I was a child, and I remember Raimondo, it said something like, Raimondo basically has a plot that's too hard to describe. I mean, even then, you know, growing up in the 70s, it had gone beyond.
Yeah, there's some ballets, you know, you cannot do now ballet for hours. It's impossible. Yeah. I don't think, like, for instance, Nureye's Sleeping Beauty is like 3 hours and something. It's so long. Everything is so fast now, internet and TikTok and everything goes fast. So I think ballet cannot be, as you know, it was part of a going out. You could be 3 hours out, and it was a part of life, enjoying going to the theater, meeting people. Now it's not like that. You just go to the theater, a part of the day of what you have to do. So big ballets, long ballets are very difficult to endure, especially if they are not, you know, very good.
Yeah, you worked with Nureyev, didn't you?
Nureyev, we saw Nureyev graduation in Moscow in 1960. He was just graduated from Mariinsky, and he came to Moscow. He was dancing at the Tchaikovsky Hall, and he was doing Corsair. And he came to see our company, and he wanted to come to Cuba, but they didn't allow him. So that's why they sent my husband, my ex-husband, instead of Rugo. And then I met him again in Paris when he was directing the Paris Opera. He invited me to his beautiful house, me and Asari. And I met Misha also, Borisnikov, when he came to Marseille to do Je nomme l'amour, all those ballets he learned from So before he did, he went to Russia. So he went into Canada.
Right. And did you teach Boris? Did he come and do your class?
Misha, he came to do my class when he was in Milan once.
Right.
Yeah, he came to my class. And Valodia, Vasiliev and Maximova also took my class. And David Halbert took my class. And this one, the Brazilian one in ABT, I just forgot his name, Marcelo also took. There's a film somewhere, and in an international ballet festival in Havana, when I see everybody, Tamara is there, so many, because it's, well, I'm so proud, I'm so happy. Life had even the possibility to work with so many beautiful and incredible. Roberto Bolli, I know him since he was in school, Robertico. And it's also a story. He had just come out of school, and Elisabetta was directing Milan, and he was so good. We were doing Romeo and Juliet, Macmillan, and because he was just from school, she couldn't give him the part of Romeo, so she gave her Paris, but he was an understudy for Romeo. And one day, well, he did his Paris rehearsal. I said, okay, Roberto, let's do the variation of Romeo, the mandolin one. And he started, and I was like, I couldn't believe my eyes, 18 years old. And then when he finished, he said, Roberto, you must repeat because I must find something to tell you. He remembers that every day. Every time he sees me, I will repeat variation for you to find something to tell me.
Yeah. Do you think that having worked with dancers of that caliber and of the people that, we all think are sort of are so great, do you think they have special qualities that you can see in a classroom? Do you think?
Yeah, you can see them. You can see them. I always say that the talent, you cannot work on talent. Talent, I call it the it. You have it or you don't have it. You can be a beautiful dancer, but there's something special that I cannot define, but that makes you, even in the corps de ballet, just your eyes instinctively goes to that person. There's a light, charisma, something that comes out of their soul that makes they are noticeable, and I've learned from them so much. I've learned so much from all those people. From Isaac, I remember Isaac coming here. I remember that's another one of my anecdotes, which is so nice. Isaac comes, we were doing the tour in China, so he came to my class, and I see he was wearing, weights in his wrist and weights in his ankles, and then we start the class, and then I see he takes the wrist weights, and then almost at the end of the class, he takes these ankle weights, and then he looks at me and he said, "It's true, everything they have told me about you."
You're making work so hard.
Yeah, that my bars were really hard. So he said, "It's true, everything they've told me about you." And then I created with him and Joe and Jeff a very nice story that we open a ballet account. So when they didn't do what I was expecting them to do on a performance, they will owe me. So right. After every show, say, "Do I owe you?" "No, you don't owe me. Your bank account is okay. That you owe me." They knew when they owed me something to my ballet account.
Right. You Susan just asked that you've had such a fascinating career, and which we're really only scratching the surface of. Have you ever thought about writing your biography?
I've always been very, very bad in writing. I talk a lot and I love to hear a lot. I remember when I read a lot, but write, it's very hard. And there's two writers, not writers, it's a journalist who have followed my career that has written a book about, we've had like 20 interviews, and he's written a book, and he's trying to find somebody that would read the book. So the biography is written, is just to find the person or the enterprise that could publish it.
Oh, I see. So you've done it.
No, he's done it, but he's trying to find somebody to publish it.
It's already to go. Well, it is an absolutely fascinating career, and you have done so much. And I think we're really lucky that you're here at English National Ballet. I'm very glad you're here. still keeping standards really high. I mean, what difference does it make, has it made being in one company again, of having that sense of just having what difference does it make sort of being in one company, having a chance to shape, you know?
Well, I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's a wonderful thing when you're able to start something and see it grow. Because when I remember the first years with ENB were very difficult. You know, the company had lost a lot of their will and their enthusiasm and their commitment for work. So for the first 2 years, it was really hard. But I think one of the bright things Tamara did is that it was very clear for them from the beginning, the standards Tamara wanted, and the way. I remember even it was one of those funny stories that the person who was in charge of the physios went to Tamara and said, "Could you please ask Loipa not to give such hard classes?"
Right.
Tamara said, "What?" And then there are girls here who remember my first classes, and they were after the bar, and now I see them and they just go through the bars like nothing. So it makes you knowing that you have been part, because it's not only my work, it's a collective work of all the ones who have taught and who have coached and who have put on ballets and everything. And what was Tamara's vision for the company, and to be part of that has been, it's for me, it's like so satisfying. You know, it's you never die if what you have done in your lifetime has been worth it. So I think for me that's very important, you know, to do my time in life, to do the best I can for everybody.
Well, we have been the very grateful recipients of that, and you can see what you have done. You do see it with dancers. So thank you, Loipa. And I think Susan's going to kind of bring things to a close. I think you losing light, which is possibly a sign.
Maybe, yeah. Well, you know, they have like a time of how many times the light has gone. I can put it on if you need it somewhere.
I think we've reached. It's the time you have to go, Loipa. So.
Okay.
So thank you, Loipa and Sarah. That was absolutely fascinating. Just listening to you reminds us what a rich and fascinating story the world of ballet and its citizens has to tell. And it's been a real privilege to hear from you, one of the Cuban jewels. And we are so grateful you're here in London, in the UK at ENB. Passing on your knowledge to the next generation and keeping this one so highly entertained. It's been a real joy and a privilege, and thank you so much for tonight. And Sarah, thank you as well.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for loving ballet. As I said, it's something that unites us, and to have the same love for ballet.
Absolutely. It crosses borders and languages. And
it does. It really does.
So thank you.
Thank you,
Sarah. And thanks to all of you. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Please, next conversation will be with Vadim Montagirov at the Royal Ballet School.
Oh, Vadim. That's one I've worked with also a lot. Vadim.
Absolutely. Come along. Details are on the website. Booking is necessary and places are going fast. So check out the website, and thank you once again. We're just on 8 o'clock. Loipa has to go. So a big round of applause to you and to Sarah, and much love from all of us.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Loipa. Lovely.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.